Okay. Hi, Shelley. Good to have you in this chat.
Lovely to be here. Thanks so much, Theresa.
Okay. All right. And my spirit guides will come through soon. We're going to talk about the topic of loss. And let's start with the prayer, and the guides can actually begin. Great Spirit, we ask for your protection as we join with the world of spirit. We ask that you would help us to open our minds, to open our hearts, and to open our lives, so that the information that is presented to us will touch our lives and minds and hearts. And we ask that you would bless what we are doing here. Amen. So we greet you once again, beloved friends, and we would greet the Lady Shelley. It is always good to work upon a platform with the Lady Shelley and, of course, her guides who work with her. So let us speak at this time about the subject of loss. And we would say that in this time in your world, there are so many senses of loss, whether it is a loss of someone who you love, whether it is a loss of income, whether it is a loss of something physical and material, or whether it is a loss of the lifestyle you have become accustomed to. And we would want to indicate to you that change has been forced on everyone in the world at present time, and for good reason. So change always brings a sense of loss. And this sense of loss of what you are accustomed to having, whether it is a person, something, or a circumstance, or even an energy that you are accustomed to having in your life. When you lose that, it sweeps you forward on a current of change, and it makes you feel uncomfortable. Because the interesting aspect is that while change in your life is inevitable, we would say to you, change is so resisted by everyone. And there is a need to adapt to new energies. If you lose someone you love, you haven't lost anything but their physical form. But usually, when you think of someone who you love, whether they are in the physical form or in the spirit world, because they have made the transition, you don't think about their physical aspects. Many of you, when you lose someone you love, become anxious because you can't remember what they looked like. But we would say to you, you can always remember what they felt like emotionally. And there is the substance of this transition. Nothing changes from the perspective of the energy of the individual. And we would say to you, if you are being swept away on a current of change, it is beautiful, even if you don't feel that at the time. Perhaps we can ask the Lady Shelley and her guides to speak to us a little about the subject of loss.
Thank you so much. Yes, loss is an interesting thing because, as you say, it can be as simple as a way of life that's changing. And we don't always recognize that in others. We look at big losses as something that needs attention. So it is anything that involves any kind of change is what creates enormous feelings of almost emptiness within people, that they feel that something of themselves is no longer there. Big losses, everybody else understands, and so people are generally supported, but a loss within oneself is something that can't be explained, and it can very much lead to not being able to cope with life in so many ways.
Yes. And if we were to ask you for an animal that represents loss, what would you tell us about?
The animal that's coming through so strongly with the idea of loss is the frog. And the frog is, it's when it's growing and when it is being formed, it needs to stay in water. It needs to stay in the unconscious. It needs to surround itself with that element of healing and cleansing that water provides. But once it has all its limbs, it needs to be able to be on the land and in the water. And this is a wonderful thing with dealing with loss, because the energy of the frog brings through that aspect that it's important to have one foot in the spiritual world and one foot very firmly on the earth as we know it, and not be caught up in either or, that the balance becomes very necessary. And finding a way to find your own voice through the loss. The loss often comes to kickstart that, especially if you haven't been able to say what you need to say, and work with the word and the emotions in the time that things happen rather than afterwards. So it's a very important time for people to find themselves through loss, because who are they without that aspect of their being? And knowing that the guides are there to support and guide us through all of that. The frog also brings through the energy of working with the seasons. There is a season for tears, there's a season for joy. And many people working through loss feel guilty if they feel joyful, because the loss is so big. So it's important to find that balance. The deep sadness can also bring through great joy if we can open ourselves to balancing that.
Yes, indeed. And we would say the entire human existence depends upon emotions. And emotions can only change and grow significantly if there are significant negative emotions. The shadow emotions brings the capacity for the emotions of expansion and light and love and peace. Yes?
Very much so, yes. Thank you.
So loss brings change. Change asks you to find the balance of peace once more. And so we feel that we have given you some insights into the concept of loss. And we would encourage you to understand that every circumstance changes, and you are not alone in those changing circumstances. We thank the Lady Shelley for sharing this platform, her knowledge, her love, and her understanding. And we leave you all with our great and unconditional love for you.